Okay, Joshua 4. Last week we heard God had told Joshua pick out 12 men. Well, this week we get to find out what these 12 men are for. So verse 1 through 3. I'll start this way.
When the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, "Choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right when the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight."
Okay. Important statement at the beginning. When all the nation had passed over. 40 years they have waited for this moment.
Yes.
And they have done it. I mean, it's not just a passing statement. They are in the promised land.
And then he sends them back to the middle.
He sends 12 of them back.
Yeah. I think I'd be so happy I got there.
And their first act is not to rush to Jericho and attack it. They had some spiritual things to deal with first. This whole chapter is about all the stuff they're going to deal with. So each tribe had a representative go pick up a stone, and these were not light stones. They were heavy stones. It shows, and they picked them up from the river. That means that was a rocky bottom river. Not like pictures show where everyone's crossing over and it's nice and smooth. It was rocky. If there were big rocks, there were little rocks. So.
And then they put one rock or maybe more where they were going to. Where each tribe was going to be.
Well, no. They put them at the point where the priests were standing in the Jordan. There's discussion on exactly where the priests were standing. Were they standing near the edge? Were they standing in the middle? Your version said in the middle. Mine says in the midst.
But it said they carried them out and piled them up at the place.
They're going to make 2 of these memorials. This one is at the point in the river where the priests are standing.
But
it says take them from there.
Yeah.
They pick.
Pick them up
wait.
from there
And bring them over and lay them down.
Oh, okay. So this, I'm sorry. They will do that again. So this one they're picking up and taking to where they're at.
Where they're going to camp.
Where they're
I'm
going
sorry,
to
I was mixed up.
spend the night.
Yeah, where they're more than a night, but they're going to spend their time there. They're taking it there. Sorry, getting them mixed up because there are 2 of them. So they're to build this memorial where they're camping.
Seems like they need more than one rock.
There are 12 of them,
12.
one for each
Well, I
tribe.
mean, one rock at their site. You could miss that one.
That's why they think they are stone. When they say stones, they mean boulders.
Yeah.
This later becomes Gilgal. If you have a map, you'll see where Gilgal is. That's where they're camping. Well, the bottom one is a later one. Where the big red thing is, that's where they think this Gilgal.
Why are there 3 Gilgals?
It's a little bit. Looks like it's a ways from the river too.
You see where all the darker gray is? That's probably how much it flooded. So they had to be away from where it floods.
Must be what is the Gaza now?
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Yeah.
No, Gaza's on the west.
Oh yeah, it is.
Gaza's on the west
This is
Israel and Egypt.
Oh,
Yeah.
so up north?
No,
no,
south.
yeah. This is on the Jordan River. That's on the
So
Mediterranean.
this is, they're over on the Mediterranean.
Yeah, and the little inset shows you where in Israel it is.
It's north of the Dead Sea.
Yeah, north of the Dead Sea. And if you notice Adam up there, when we studied about the river being stopped, that's where it says it stopped. So all that area from there down to the Dead Sea, no water. So again, it doesn't say how they crossed over, just that they crossed over quickly. I know we always see pictures of them crossing in columns. I don't think so, personally. I think they had all that area to go, and I think they spread out and went across the river. Maybe not in a line. We don't see any instructions.
They may have been in a hurry because they didn't know when the water would come down.
Well, and these poor priests are standing there holding this ark. They're holding this ark while the 12 men come back and get the stones. They're holding the ark.
Yeah.
They're still there. And they are still there after this, because we have more. Verses 4 through 7.
Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the children of Israel, 1 man from every tribe. And Joshua said to them, cross over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and each one of you take up a stone on his shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you. When your children ask in time to come, saying, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall answer them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. And these stones shall be for a memorial to the children of Israel forever.
So 12 stones, obviously 12 tribes. Notice it is not called an altar.
Yeah.
An altar is where you make sacrifices, and this is a memorial. This is to remember.
When we were in church in Portland, our pastor did a series of sermons on Memorial Rock and went through the book of Joshua and all the different memorial. And he was, do you have a memorial, like
Yeah.
a memorial rock to remember things by?
Well, I don't have rock, but I have some things.
Like a
Yeah.
rock in your
some
rock.
things.
A symbolic rock.
Symbol.
Yeah,
That's what it's
but that
talking
was, and how all these, it was to help them remember.
And these stones are going to be a memory for them as they go back and see these stones. This is the final miracle of the Exodus. The rest of the miracles are the miracles of the Promised Land. This is the miracle of the Exodus, last one, because they are in the Promised Land now. They were to make sure future generations knew what these rocks were for. They aren't just a pile of rocks. And they're not to worship this pile of rocks. They're to remember what these pile of rocks represent. They're to worship the one who created the miracle to bring these rocks out from the river bottom.
So they must be carrying these rocks along after.
No. They leave them there at Gilgal.
They're still there.
And it's in the Promised Land, so
Have you seen them?
people will come visit them. I don't know if they're still piled up or not. So, verse 8 and 9.
And the children of Israel did so, just as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones from the midst of the Jordan, as the Lord had spoken to Joshua, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them to the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. Then Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests who bore the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there to this day.
Okay, starts off with a really great statement. And they did as they were commanded. Always a good thing, especially with this group of people. They did what they were supposed to do. So good thing. So they create the memorial on the land, and then Joshua does it in the river where the priest stood. 12 more stones. Who's going to even see those when that water lets loose? Well, during the drought season, they might be visible. Don't know, but it was something God wanted, so they did it. It may not. Sometimes we think, God, what are you doing?
This translation gives a different perspective to me. Joshua set up the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the river at the spot where the priest who carried the Ark of the Covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. If they were to put them where they camped, they would not be in the middle of the river. He said the ones that had been there, he set them up, because they brought them, and he placed them in a
But
memorial.
it's two different things.
Yeah, my note says Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan. It is unclear whether this is a separate group of stones from those set up in
Well,
Gilgal.
don't worry about it.
The Hebrew text could suggest a second
Not a
memorial.
big deal.
So, but
Yeah,
anyway,
most of the commentaries I read think it's the second
second one.
And it says, and they're there to this day. Well, to what day? They're at the point that this book is being written. So if you go try to find them today, probably not. Because as Olga was noticing, that river is a really twisty river.
Yes.
The reason it's really twisty is because it is going way downhill. And it is rapids and things like that. It's curvy rather than going straight down a hill. A lot of rivers don't go straight down a hill.
Yeah, because it dropped 600 feet in 65 miles. So that's like,
Yeah.
uh,
It
you know.
curved down along kind of ridges.
And how many miles? It dropped 60 feet in how many
It
miles?
dropped 600 feet in 65 miles.
Which is gentle.
Rapid.
600 feet.
You want to go rapid. Right, rapid.
Yeah.
That's the place.
Yeah. But you can imagine Joshua doesn't write this till near the end of his life, so these stones stay there. They had to be pretty big stones. So poor 12 guys that had to lug these things around.
Because it said they were to put it on.
They put them on their shoulders. Yeah. Okay, verse 10 through 14.
For the priest bearing the ark stood in the midst of the Jordan until everything was finished that the Lord commanded Joshua to tell the people according to all that Moses had commanded Joshua. The people passed over in haste, and when all the people had finished passing over, the ark of the Lord and the priests passed over before the people. The sons of Reuben and the sons of Gad and the half-tribe of Manasseh passed over armed before the people of Israel, as Moses had told them. About 40,000 ready for war passed over before the Lord for battle to the plains of Jericho. On that day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him just as they had stood in awe of Moses all the days of his life.
Okay, so those priests stood there for a long time. I mean, as all the people crossed. And here's where we see that it says they rushed over. And then as the 12 men came and got stones, and then came and got stones a second time and set them up, the priests are standing there with that ark the whole time. A lot of faith in those guys. How long that was, we don't know. But again, it says they went over in haste. You notice we don't get the marching orders for them going across the river. I mean, a lot of times when they're marching, when they marched to the promised land, there was this tribe and this tribe and this tribe and this tribe. Here we get the 2.5 tribes that went over first, armed, ready to protect the people. But we don't get anything else. So we don't know how they went over. I personally don't think it was an organized manner. I think they just went over. And they rushed. But it doesn't say, so it doesn't matter.
It wasn't easy, certainly.
No. Now, we also see here that the 2.5 tribes only sent 40,000 warriors over. That was not the total amount available from those tribes. They figure they should have had 110,000. So they don't send everybody over. So, don't know why. Maybe to protect their land and their wives and children, but we don't see why. Now, most of the ites that they're going to come across, they had armies of about 40,000. So just these 2.5 tribes are about the same number. You start adding those other tribes in there, they are going to way outnumber any of these nations.
And then if the tribes outnumbered the ones they were going against, it wouldn't show the power of God. It
Right.
would just show the power of the people.
Yeah. And notice that there were 12 stones. So even these 2.5 tribes that are not going to live on that side of the river, they're part of that memorial. And then we find out that the people come to adore Joshua. We were told back in Joshua 3 that God would raise Joshua up as a great leader. And this is the fulfillment of that promise. And he's going to continue to bless Joshua and his leadership. Now verse 15 through 18. It's Betty.
Now the Lord said to Joshua, command the priests who carry the ark of the testimony that they come up from the Jordan. So Joshua commanded the priests, saying, come up from the Jordan. It came about when the priests who carried the ark of the covenant of the Lord had come up from the middle of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet were lifted up to dry ground, that the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and went over all its banks as before.
So you remember how they were commanded to carry this ark covered with part of the tabernacle? People weren't really supposed to see it. I saw lots of drawings of the crossing, and I actually found one where they had it draped. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm not off base. I'm thinking when they had to carry it covered. So someone else thought that too. We don't have pictures, of course, so we don't know if they gave up on covering it, but it was supposed to be covered. So these priests finally get to move. Finally. They were in the water first. They are the last ones out of that water. Well, they stepped into water. They're not stepping out of water. They stood there the whole time while those stones are being gathered. Don't know if they were saying, come on, guys, hurry up, find your rock, let's go. They don't hear anything. They had the great privilege of carrying that ark, but they also had the huge responsibility. So as soon as the last guy steps out of the water, or out of the riverbed, the dry water, the dry land, that water comes rushing down. Now, being that it was stopped up at Adam, 18 miles up, God must have let it loose a little before. Yeah. God's timing.
It's a miracle.
Yeah, it shows a supernatural miracle. It also closes any escape route. They are now committed. They're in the promised land. Do you think God's going to split that or stop that water for them to escape back across? No, they are stuck in the promised land. They are committed.
But the tribes that stayed on the other side of the Jordan,
When it's time for them to go back, I don't know if it's going to tell us how they go back. But if it's not flood time, when it's time for them to go back, it's not hard to cross that river. It's at flood time. Flood time is almost impossible. That's why it's a miracle. Okay, verse 19 and 20.
Now the people came up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they camped in Gilgal on the east border of Jericho. And those 12 stones were which they had took, I'm sorry, yeah, and the 12 stones which they took out of the Jordan, Joshua set up in Gilgal.
10th day of the 10th month, or 10th day of the first month. You know what's supposed to happen on the 10th day of the first month? Passover. Coincidence?
No.
They started this Exodus with a Passover. They ended it with a Passover. Time to set up the stones. The men set up the stones. But do you see who it says set up the stones? It says Joshua set them up. Do you think he really set them up? He probably organized it. So Gilgal becomes their base of operations. It's kind of their beachhead. Kind of, think D-Day where they come storming into Normandy and they're on the beach. Kind of that idea. That's where they're staying. That's Gilgal. Gilgal means the reproach has been rolled away. And it's not the last we're going to hear of Gilgal. Saul is going to be anointed king there. Later, Hosea and Amos are going to condemn it because it becomes the center of idolatry. Isn't that a shame? The place they enter, the promised land, is going to become an ungodly place. Verse 21 through 24.
Then Joshua said to the Israelites, in the future your children will ask, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, this is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the river right before their eyes, and he kept it dry until they were across, just as he did at the Red Sea, when he dried it up until we had all crossed over. He did this so all the nations of the earth might know that the Lord's hand is powerful, and so you might fear the Lord your God forever.
It's so important to remember what God's done for us and to pass it on. I mean, how much do we
And they didn't get
lose?
to the promised land without God. I mean, God
No.
made it possible for them to be.
Yeah. And this group of people seems to remember that. Their parents weren't always so good at that.
Renewed.
It's so easy to remember the bad things and the grumbling but God wants us to remember the times of joy too. In fact, more, yeah. It gives you hope when there's trouble to remember when God was there for you. And there's so much stress on sharing this with their children. It's important for us to share our faith with our children and our grandchildren and them to realize where our faith comes from. And this memorial is going to be a witness to God's faithfulness. Now, obviously, for this area to become the center of idolatry, they're going to stop telling their children about it. But that's not why God wanted it. He wanted them to know. And it's a memorial, again. It's not made to worship. It's made to represent something, to help us remember. So they are to remember what God had done for them to bring them here. 40 years worth of traveling. Okay, now chapter 5. So this starts out with the reaction of the Amorite kings. Remember their area, the king, the ruler of a city is a king. So this is the king of Jericho is one of the Amorite kings. Verse, I guess it's just 1.
Now when all the Amorite kings west of the Jordan and all the Canaanite kings along the coast heard how the Lord had dried up the Jordan before the Israelites until we had crossed over, their hearts melted, and they no longer had the courage to face the Israelites.
Okay, so Canaanites are mentioned over 150 times in the Bible. It's the overall term of all those other ites that live in in Canaan. They are descended from Noah's grandson Canaan, whose father was Ham. And Canaan had been cursed because of that incident with Noah lying naked and Ham walking backward to cover him. Canaan gets cursed. So that's these people, they're cursed. So they have melting hearts. Can you imagine a melted heart? Have you ever had a melted heart? They are stunned. They are terrified. That river was supposed to protect them until flood season was over. And that river let them down. These people are now on their side. The only thing left to protect them are those walls, which they're putting a lot of faith in those walls, but the river, yeah.
They probably thought, if God dried up the river, what's he going to do to the walls?
Yeah, so they're already in terror that there's 2 million people camping near their city. You can see how close Gilgal is to Jericho. They probably had thought they were going to have time to get ready while that river was flooded, but that time's gone. And what they're probably getting ready for is a siege. They're probably gathering all the crops they can, because the logical way to capture Jericho would have been a siege. So they're probably getting ready for that and thinking they have lots of time to get ready for that. Now they don't think they have that much time.
And, God was showing his power by stopping the water when the river was flooded. He could have just said, oh, you just wait till it trickles down, then you can just walk across. But this was a way, God was showing his power.
Yeah. And that terrified these people, because they had not seen anything like that. Rahab had already told the spies that the people of Jericho were afraid. Well, how much more afraid are they now? Because these people just moved that much closer. Now, they probably think the Israelites are going to attack immediately. That's a logical thing.
They have to regroup after crossing.
Nope, not even close. Not yet. Not time to attack. That's good. You can imagine that's going to even build more terror in these people as these Canaanites. You'll see all these incidents that's going to delay them. And Jericho's thinking they're going to attack any time, but just waiting.
But they make a messenger.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine the terror? I mean, have you ever had to know something bad is coming and you had to wait? They know something bad's coming, really bad, and they're expecting it any moment, and they're just having to wait. That just builds your terror even more. Okay, verse 2 through 7.
At that time the Lord said to Joshua, make flint knives and circumcise the sons of Israel a second time. So Joshua made flint knives and circumcised the sons of Israel at Gibeath Haaraloth. And this is the reason why Joshua circumcised them. All the males of the people who came out of Egypt, all the men of war, had died in the wilderness on the way they had come out of Egypt. Though all the people who came out had been circumcised, yet all the people who were born on the way in the wilderness after they had come out of Egypt had not been circumcised. For the people of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness until all the nation, the men of war who came out of Egypt, perished, because they did not obey the voice of the Lord. The Lord swore to them that he would not let them see the land that the Lord had sworn to their fathers to give us, a land flowing with milk and honey. So it was their children whom he raised up in their place that Joshua circumcised, for they were uncircumcised because they had not been circumcised on the way.
There are so many things in this part of the story that are like, what? What? Shouldn't they be attacking Jericho right now? But no, they are going to circumcise all these guys.
To become right before the Lord.
And you can bet they are anxious to get going. They want to go attack.
Nobody attacked them either.
Yeah. Kay Arthur said, man wants to do, but God wants us to be.
Yeah.
They are not spiritually ready. Circumcision was a command of the Lord. All Israelite men were to be circumcised. That was given to Abraham. Why are these guys not circumcised already?
Because they were traveling in the wilderness.
But still,
Disobedient.
Maybe there weren't good tools to circumcise in the desert. They were traveling. Maybe they didn't think they had time to stop, and so these babies could recover because they were supposed to be circumcised as babies.
Yeah.
But they were wishing their parents had done it then.
Yeah. The adults knew, I'm not going to be going into the promised land. Why bother?
Yeah.
They knew they had been disobedient with God, and maybe they thought, well, God's promises no longer apply to me, so why should I circumcise? Don't know. We don't know why they weren't circumcised. Traveling is obviously a big part of it.
But when they were disobedient all the time,
They were
so
pretty
they
disobedient.
cannot follow God's.
Yeah, and there's lots of reasons people give, but I kind of agree with Robert Hubbard, not L. Ron Hubbard, Robert Hubbard, where he says it was just a really sorry, pathetic example of their apathy.
yeah,
They didn't care.
yeah.
But it's time to fix that.
Because when you stop and think about it, it's not such a big thing for a baby.
Mm-mm.
And even though they were traveling, I don't go along with this.
The recovery time, because they
just
would have been
were
carrying the
not
babies
obeying
anyway. But
God.
yeah,
That's the whole thing. Now, if they're adults, and it's a big thing.
and remember, Moses wasn't so great at this. Back in Exodus 4:24, God was going to kill Moses because he hadn't circumcised his sons, and Zipporah quickly circumcises a son and throws a foreskin at Moses. So Moses wasn't great at it either. Now, in verse 4, it makes it sound like Joshua did the circumcising. Probably not. It was a priestly duty. And he is not a priest. He's not from the tribe of priests, so he wouldn't have been doing it. But he probably oversaw it.
We made sure about that.
Yeah.
He made sure the flint knives were ready and available.
Yeah. Now, most of the people around them, including the Egyptians, they did circumcision of their sons. The Egyptians only did it for the rich boys, though. But for different reasons. This is the only group that circumcised for God, as a symbol of a covenant with God. So they are going to circumcise pretty much 80% of the guys.
1,000 people.
Or thousands and thousands. Thousands and thousands. They're going to be sore. Not the recommended battle strategy.
Well, wouldn't it have been all the men?
All the men born since Egypt.
And
So all the men
that's who-
40 and younger.
So that's who would have been crossed over. So it would be all
Yeah.
of them, because
Well-
those who had been born in Egypt, they had to stay on the other side.
They had died.
Yeah.
Well,
But they had
most of
died.
them.
So
If
basically, this is all the men.
any of the men that were under, any of the men that were children when God condemned
If
those.
they were under 20,
So-
age of 20. So.
Yeah.
So,
So,
next year-
But they probably hadn't been circumcised.
well, if they came out of Egypt,
Okay.
it says they were. But who knows? Anyway, most of the guys. So flint knives are made of stone. They had metals at that time. They're in the middle of the Iron Age. So they have metal. But they probably used flint for a couple reasons. It was traditional. The stone is probably obsidian, which they could find in that area, and which was smooth and sharp, and bacteria did not grow on it. So it's somewhat sterile by their standards. In Ethiopia, they still circumcised with obsidian stone.
Interesting.
And when it says circumcising for the second time, that doesn't mean they were circumcised and were doing it again. No, it's about renewing the observance of the covenant. So it says they did it at Gibeath Haroth. Does anyone have the other interpretation of what this name means?
It's note on my Bible says the hill of the foreskins.
Yeah, that's what that translates into. The hill of the foreskins. Now, it doesn't mean that they piled up all the foreskins and that's the hill. That's gross. I mean, that's not what it is. It just means that's where they did it. It was at a hill and they did the circumcision. So verse 8 says, when the circumcising of the whole nation was finished, they remained in their places in the camp until they were healed. So it takes some time to heal from this. I mean, today it would still take some time, but back then, no anesthetics, no anything. So in the meantime, you got the city of Jericho still waiting. And if the city of Jericho had known what had just happened, they were primed for attack. If Jericho had realized, these guys wouldn't be able to fight. In fact, if you remember back in Genesis 34, we saw Samson and Levi trick the men of a city into all being circumcised, and then they went in and slaughtered them. Well, it could have been the same thing, but no, God was protecting them. But they had to obey God. Now, why would God have commanded this now? Why not why not do it before they crossed? It shows they're going to have to rely on God. Mm-hmm. It can't be them. And they had to be in the right spiritual place.
Yeah.
Okay, verse 9.
Then the Lord said to Joshua, today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you. So the place has been called Gilgal to this day.
Okay, Debbie had made a note. God's protection as they healed because the Canaanite and Amorite kings were afraid of the Israelites. Yeah. Okay, so
they're still in Gilgal?
Yeah, they're in Gilgal. They're camped there. So yeah. When it says I've rolled away the reproach of Egypt, it doesn't say what the reproach of Egypt is. I didn't see much discussion on it.
Mine says, today I rolled away the shame of your slavery in Egypt.
My note says the reproach of Egypt may have been the insults the Egyptians would have made if the Lord had not brought Israel into the promised land. It could also represent the disobedient generation that has now died.
Yeah. And that's the only note I saw, something similar to that now the Egyptians were not taunting the Israelites as they were leaving because they were too busy crying because their kids had died. But along the way, the Egyptians, they would have met up with Egyptians, and the Egyptians would have known these guys didn't go straight to a promised land. They're wandering around the desert. Ha ha, look at their God. So this takes away that taunting.
Yeah,
that makes the most sense.
Remind me, kind of with us, when we are baptized, we are kind of cut with old way of living and then new creation in Christ.
Yeah.
So I think this is also representing that they pass through the river. It's like baptism in the new way.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Mm-hmm.
So Gilgal means rolling away. So God rolled away their sins, so that becomes the name of the place, Gilgal. And God still takes our shame and our dishonor, and he rolls it away. We just need faith in him. Mm-hmm. And we get that. Okay, verse 10 and 11.
Now the children of Israel camped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month at twilight on the plains of Jericho. And they ate of the produce of the land on the day after Passover, unleavened bread and parched grain on the very same day.
Okay, again, an accident that they're crossing at Passover? No. This is the first Passover in the new land. But it's only the third recorded celebration of Passover we see. Most say that they didn't celebrate Passover during the wilderness wanderings. They had the original Passover, which was the angel passing over. They had a celebration at Mount Sinai, and now this one. No Passover will ever be the same as this first one in the Promised Land. Now, something that ties this all together, no uncircumcised man could celebrate Passover. So see, they had to be circumcised. And remember, Passover is not a one-day thing. Passover was always followed by the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we don't see whether that was added on, but add all those days. If it was added on, you got a week. And Jericho's sitting there waiting, being more terrified, wondering what is going on. Now, they may be camping in sight of Jericho. They probably are. They might be able to see the city, and the city might be able to see them. If not, you know there were spies out there watching what they were doing. So these two acts, the circumcision and the observance of Passover, those things together are like putting a sunset on their wilderness wanderings, on their disobedience. Their first acts in the new land are renewing the covenant with God and bringing a joyous new sunrise. Verse 12.
Then the manna ceased on the day after they had eaten the produce of the land. And the children of Israel no longer had manna, but they ate the food of the land of Canaan that year.
So we saw back in Exodus 16, verse 35, that Moses told them they would eat manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Here they are. Moses told them 40 years ago this was going to happen. They no longer need manna. So how do you think the Israelites are feeling about this?
If it's like when they left Egypt, they wanted to go back to the land of the leeks and that. So do they still want this manna?
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't know what to do with the produce because...
Yeah, they'd never farmed before. It might be a mix of relief and worry. They didn't really have to work for the manna. They had to go out and pick it up off the ground.
Still
They
was
could get
complaining.
lazy. And
Yeah.
And
they knew it was there every day.
Yeah.
Your crops.
But still they weren't happy.
I know they were unhappy, but now it's like their security blankets being torn away. You got to get your own food now.
God provided when needed,
Yeah.
and now crops were available to them.
Yeah. Now whose crops?
The Canaanites.
The Canaanites. Now the Canaanites are all shut up in the city of Jericho, so there's fields outside.
Well, and I remember growing up in Sunday school of Caleb and Joshua coming back and the pictures of the bunches of grapes that they were carrying and everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So, and some of your versions may say they ate the old corn, meaning the stuff that was there. So, the Canaan, like I said, the people of Jericho would have been preparing for a siege, so they would have grabbed all the food they could, but they realized they were in a rush, so there was probably plenty of crop still out there. Yeah,
Mine says parched grain.
it's been out in the sun. Yeah, so yeah, they didn't grow this. Is pretty much the point.
Right.
It's,
Right.
they're taking it from the Canaanites.
I think they had time to plant it.
Oh, no.
No,
No.
they just went-
That would have added months to this.
Right.
So
So now the map shows that where they stopped at Gilgal
Mhm.
and Jericho, there is quite a bit of land in between right there where they could have had all of these plants.
Yeah,
And
and they
all
probably
this
did.
Stuff planted, but
Yeah.
then Jericho lived on.
Although again, from Gilgal to the river was about 5 miles.
This is
So
only about
that's
half a mile.
yeah.
But look at how it's green and plain land is.
I have someone that Laura, one of my friends, commented. I think sometimes we need to remember that God always provides, just not always the way we picture it in our heads.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, look at verse 13 through 15.
When Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing before him with his drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" And he said, "No, but I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come." And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped, and said to him, "What does my Lord say to his servant?" And the commander of the Lord's army said to Joshua, "Take off your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so.
Okay, so Joshua is looking toward Jericho, and there's this man that just appears. And Joshua is going up to him. But this guy has a sword. You don't fool around with a guy that has a sword like this.
And it's drawn.
Yeah, drawn sword. And so Joshua asks them the logical question, friend or foe? What's the first thing the guy says?
I am the commander.
No,
of the
that's
army
not
of
the first
Lord.
thing.
No,
He says no. Friend or foe? No. Does that answer the question?
No.
Friend or foe? He didn't say neither. He said no. He says he commands God's army. Joshua didn't ask the right question. The question wasn't whether this man was on Joshua's side, but whether Joshua and the people were on God's side. Now, some people say this is an angel, but I am going to state pretty strongly this is Jesus.
Oh.
Because what does Joshua do?
Takes
Falls
off
on
his
his face
He worships.
and worships. And
Every
he doesn't
time you
stop
see
it.
an angel and someone try to worship him, the angel says, "No, don't worship me."
yes.
This being accepts worship.
That's right.
Only God accepts worship. Well, besides Satan, but only God. Jewish sources say it's Michael, but that doesn't follow because Michael would never accept worship.
Right.
Jesus wants the same submission shown to him that Moses showed at the burning bush. Take your shoes off, and because this is holy ground. An angel wouldn't make it holy ground. Only God makes it holy ground. And what's Joshua's response? He's on his face, takes his shoes off. The whole point of this seems to be that Joshua, it wasn't for Joshua to claim the allegiance of God, but for God to claim Joshua. They are going to fight together, but Joshua needed to follow the commander of the armies of the Lord, not do it his own way. And we get this because the plan that's coming up is not a, is an insane battle plan. Now we don't see this figure again. We'll see him in Joshua 6, but we don't see him actually in the fight, but he's there because he pretty much says, I'm the commander of the Lord's army. So I think we will stop there rather than get into Joshua 6 where we actually get into the battle, the whole battle. So, and Debbie said, I think based off Laura's comment, exactly, the manna wasn't as expected, and how these crops the Canaanites had abandoned. Praise God for his faithful provision. Okay, so I am going to shut off. See you all later.